Good evening. Welcome to this panel discussion, The Power of Motherhood. This is a joint program between the Reginald F. Lewis Museum and the Kaiser Permanente Community Health Team. We'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, especially for this very important discussion about the resilience and the power of mothers. The Power of Motherhood is the first in a series, a three-part series entitled Still We Rise. And certainly we know mothers do rise to the occasion. We hope you will join us for the other parts of this wonderful program. But most of all, we're happy to have you join us this evening. And now I would like to introduce Celeste James, who is the Executive Director of Community Health for Kaiser Permanente.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Wanda. I want to thank you and all of our friends at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. It has been such a pleasure for Kaiser Permanente to join with this museum in partnership for the second year, and to know that even in a virtual environment, we still can have deep and meaningful conversations. In fact, we are two very different organizations with different missions, yet we have found common ground at the intersection of race, culture, and health. As the leading health system, as one of the leading national health systems, Kaiser Permanente provides high quality care and coverage to nearly 12 million people across this country, and about almost 800,000 here in this region. And while we are deeply committed to high quality health care and service, we know that healthcare alone is not enough. We know that those who are challenged with inequities and injustice have to be addressed, that we must be able to go beyond healthcare in our four walls and address inequities. That is why we also address the social drivers of health: homelessness, economic opportunity, access to healthy foods, and more. These have been the areas that we are not only addressing in our communities, but that have really been at the center of the discussions that we've had here at the museum. So while we've had some fun at the museum with fun days, we had a fun day, a Kaiser Permanente fun day last year, and we've celebrated our African-American healthcare heroes. We've also had some serious talk about the effects of COVID-19 on Black and Brown communities. And now today we're here to talk about the power of motherhood. So I really want to thank all of our panelists. I want to welcome our new president, our new regional president, Ruth Williams-Brinkley, who is joining us today. And I want to thank especially Sybrina Fulton for being our keynote speaker. And once again, I want to thank all of you who have taken time out of your evening to be with us today to join in this conversation. So with that, I want to turn it back over and say, I hope that you enjoy and fully engage tonight. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Ruth Williams-Brinkley, and I'm the president of Kaiser Permanente here in the Mid-Atlantic region. I am very pleased to welcome you to this evening's event, which is being brought to you through a partnership between Kaiser Permanente and our friends at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Baltimore. I am so proud. I can't tell you how proud I am to be a part of an organization that's committed to eliminating health disparities and creating care equity across our communities. Kaiser Permanente has a deep-seated and long-standing commitment to equity, inclusion, and diversity. Yet, we recognize that we can all do more to support an end to systemic racism. We also recognize the incredible toll that inequities take on our health, and that is why we're here today. As a mother, I can tell you that moms play a vital role in our society. Moms nurture, moms protect, and moms love. As women who are moms to children of color, we want the same access to opportunity and the same access to the American dream for our children as other mothers want for their children. We are willing and able to work hard for that dream, and we teach our children the value of hard work, ethical behavior, and living by a set of values that help to make our communities and our world a better place in which to live. And yet, we have additional and very different worries for our children of color. We worry about their safety. We wonder if they will be treated fairly and justly. We worry if they will be safe in a world that is not always safe and kind for people of color. And yes, we worry if they will return home to us at night after being out in a world that is very, sometimes hostile to them just because of the color of their skin. As we work to address decades of racism across our nation, mothers are demonstrating another role as advocates for those who do not have a voice or who have lost their voice to violence and racism. Tonight, we will dig into how one mother has demonstrated her power and resilience by tackling the very difficult topics of racism, police brutality, gun violence, and criminal justice reform. While each of us, all of us in some way, are impacted by these issues, the stress that they can create, particularly for our communities of color, we women carry a particularly troublesome burden. We're joined tonight by a woman who over the past 8 years has demonstrated just how powerful a mother's love can be. How powerful that love can be in the face of devastating tragedy. When I say George Floyd, when I say Breonna Taylor, when I say Ahmaud Arbery, when I say Trayvon Martin, you probably recognize the names of these Black Americans who needlessly lost their lives to violence in recent years. When I say their names, you likely considered deaths that did not have to occur and the racism that played a role in their losses of their lives. As a society, we are facing a reckoning that has been in development for decades, probably centuries. There are many who have been a part of helping us recognize the need for change. And yet, each time we see a name in our headlines, another senseless death, we must recognize that a mother is grieving. A mother has lost a child. Tonight, we will consider the impact of mothers on the vital changes that we must make on so many fronts to address racism. Tonight, we will learn from example of how one mother turned grief into advocacy, how she turned pain into focus. In 2012, Sybrina Fulton lost her son, her 17-year-old son, Trayvon Martin, after he was shot unarmed by a neighborhood watch commander in Sanford, Florida. Like too many mothers, Ms. Fulton experienced the paralyzing and unimaginable grief of losing her child, of losing her son. At the time that Trayvon was killed, I remember hearing about it on the news and thinking about the incredible and unbearable pain that his parents, especially his mother, must have experienced. Research demonstrates that the mental, emotional, and physical health of Black mothers are impacted by police and community violence. Black mothers face heart attacks, maternal mortality and morbidity, post-traumatic stress disorders, and other conditions related to the impact of violence. And yet, Sybrina Fulton took her pain and turned it into positive action that demonstrates love for her community and for our nation. She speaks out against violence, promotes the need to build better, safer communities, and she demonstrates fully the power of love, human rights, and human dignity for all. When I think of Miss Fulton, I think of some of John Legend's words in the song, "Never Break." She will never break. She is built on a foundation, stronger than the pain. She will never break. As the water rises and the mountains shake, she will never break. As a current candidate for the Commissioner of Miami-Dade County in Florida, Ms. Fulton is currently taking her advocacy beyond speaking as she pushes for affordable housing, better transportation, and economic opportunities for all. We are grateful to you, Ms. Fulton, for joining us tonight so that we can learn from your wisdom, from your experience, and your grace. The grace you harnessed as the power of a mother facing the unthinkable pain of losing her child. Ms. Fulton holds a bachelor's degree in English from Florida Memorial University. She has spent more than 25 years working for the Miami-Dade County Housing Development Agency. She is also a mother to her son, Javaris Fulton. Please join me now in welcoming Sybrina Fulton to discuss the power of motherhood.
Thank you so much. And before I start, I need to apologize to everyone. I had everything set up on my computer at home, but I'm not at home. I'm in Washington, D.C. With the National Action Network for the March on Washington in remembrance of Dr. King and also John Lewis with Reverend Sharpton. So I just want to apologize. There's problems with the internet here. I think everybody's trying to get on the internet. I don't know, but I was not able to get on the internet in order to connect to this call in the appropriate manner. So I just want to apologize for that you guys have to look at my picture instead of my face in person. So I want to say that. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay. I just want to start off by telling everybody how an average person that I was when this happened to me. I worked for Miami-Dade County for 24 years. I had a bachelor's degree. I had a house, one car, 2 kids, and, just an average mom. And so I want people to know, how average I am and I was at the time when this happened. I want them to know that there was nothing extraordinary about me. There was nothing that I can tell you that I would have had to prepare for in order to prepare for this. There was nothing. And so I just want people to know that, because I think when they see me and they speak to me and they hear me, they think that it's something else. I can tell you that even when I started and they wanted me to have training, I didn't want training. I just really want to speak to the heart, from my heart. I don't want to, tell you about what other people have said. I don't want to give you quotes that other people have said, even though I do use Maya Angelou all the time and I say, still I rise, but I do, and I have to rise back up regardless of what's going on. But I just want to just talk to you for a few minutes about some things, not only that that I experienced, but other moms experience as well. And so I just have to tell you that you have to keep your mind right. There was some times when I was struggling and I felt that I was going down a road that I really didn't want to be on, and that's the road of depression. And I didn't want to be there, because I can certainly tell you that 95% of my life I was happy. And so here comes this incident that happens in 2012. This tragedy that happens in 2012. It's not a story, because it's not a beginning and an end. It's a tragedy that happened in my life in 2012 when my son was 17-year-old, shot and killed, unarmed. It interrupted my life. I can certainly tell you about that. I can certainly tell you that I did not want to be in the space that I was in. I did not want to be on the floor in my purple room with tears running down my face. I didn't want to be on that road. And I struggled with God. Yes, I struggled with God, and I struggled with myself because I didn't want to be there. I would look in the mirror and I would tell myself, because everybody was saying how strong that I was. Oh, Trayvon Martin's mom, she's so strong. She's so strong. But on the inside, I didn't feel the strength in me. I felt weak. I felt hopeless and helpless. And I would look in the mirror and I would tell myself that I was strong, and I would start crying. I would literally do that on a daily basis, more than one time a day. And I kept telling myself, no, I'm strong. I'm strong. People see it in me and I don't see it in myself. People see it in me and I don't feel it in my body, but I'm strong. And I wanted to convince myself that I was, but every day I looked in the mirror, I didn't feel the strength within me. I felt weak. I didn't know what to do, that my 17-year-old son was in heaven and I was here on earth and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know that I would ever be happy again. I didn't feel like I would ever smile again. I didn't feel like my life would move on to the next stage, to the next level. But then one day I looked in that mirror and I told myself that I was strong, and so I became. Sometimes we have to encourage ourselves. Sometimes we have to talk about the spirit that we have within us. We have to talk about the power that we have within us, and we have to mean it. You can't just say it and not mean it. So I had to line up my thoughts with what I was feeling. And it was that day that I really realized how strong I really was, because I could have lost my mind by losing a 17-year-old, my unarmed son. I could have really lost my mind. But I decided that I didn't want to be on that road. And so I needed to know what to do to come from that space that I was in. And I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know whether I should talk to my pastor, my mom, or friends, or whoever. I didn't know, because I had never been in the presence. I never was connected to somebody who had lost a child. So I was lost myself on a road that I didn't know what to do. And so I struggled with God. I did, and I told God he picked the wrong family. You should have picked another family. Another family could have handled this better. Another mother could have handled this better. Another father, another brother, sister, just somebody else could have handled this better instead of me, instead of my life being interrupted. And I struggled with that. I struggled with it a lot. And then God told me it was me. And he told me it already happened. I'm not going to change it. And that's that. And I could not believe that I felt that God had left me. And I know the Bible tells you that he will never leave nor forsake you, but I believe that he had left me. And I said, God, why did you leave me? And he said, I never left you. He wanted me to use the power that I had within, but I didn't see it at the time. It took a while for me to realize how strong that I really was, and how my words and my thoughts speaks to people's heart. I didn't realize that. And so I started reaching out to other mothers who lost children through gun violence. And I started reaching out to different families. I started reaching out to Eric Garner's family and Mike Brown's family and Tamar Rice's family and Jordan Davis' family and Dante Hamilton's family and Sandra Band's family, just all of those families that you can imagine. I started reaching out to them and they started reaching out to me. And I have a organization within the Trayvon Martin Foundation. It's called the Circle of Mothers. And that organization, that society of women, that society of moms, is what really, really, really helped me, because it kind of helped me take the pressure off of what I was really going through. By reaching out to other mothers and standing with other mothers, it helped me take the pressure. it didn't relieve the pressure, but it kind of distracted me a little bit from what I was going through by helping other people. And I'm going to tell you that it definitely helped me. It definitely helped me. I don't know where I would be without the other mothers. I don't know where I would be without bonding with them, without standing with them. And when you all get a chance, you can look up Circle of Mothers. You'll see all the mothers that I mentioned and more have been to the Circle of Mothers. We do it once a year in Miami, where we come together, we bond together. A lot of times, we feel like when we're going through something like this, we feel like we all alone. And so that Circle of Mothers puts the confidence back in other mothers, that you're looking at another mother and say, well, she did it, maybe I can do it too. She survived, maybe I could survive too. She's still living, maybe I could still live too. She's happy, maybe I can be happy too. And so a lot of times we really don't realize that until we see other people that have been through the same thing that we've been through, living a prosperous life, living a good life, living a happy life. And so that's one of the very, very purposes and the importance of Circle of Mothers, just for us to bond together. During the Circle of Mothers weekend, we laugh, we cry, we're sad, we happy, we go through so many emotions, we exercise, we hug, it's a spiritual cleansing. It's just so many things and so many emotions come out that weekend. And I invite about 100 mothers each year. This is the first year that I did not, because of the coronavirus, and I wasn't able to do it, but we did do a Zoom call, and we were able to just to connect with each other just for a little while. We had Yana Van Zant to come on, and we had somebody from Sunday's Best to sing a song, and it was really something special for the moms, because we do need it. Right after Mother's Day is when I have the Circle of Mothers. And so that's important, that you know, just to keep your head right, just to keep your mind right, and just to connect with other mothers to know that you're not alone. And so I just want to, just home in on that for a little while, just to let people know how difficult it is and how it's a struggle when you are going through a tragedy such as this. I know people have tragedies in their life. They lose a mother, a father, a grandmother, a grandfather, aunts, uncles, cousins, but there is nothing that compares to the loss of a child. And so I just, I know people don't understand, and that's something that I tell the moms every year. I said, stop getting upset, stop getting angry, stop getting mad, because people don't know what you're going through. They don't understand how your heart has been broken into 1,000 pieces, and you have to live with that pieces of your heart every day. People don't really understand it. And so I just really don't try to explain to people what I'm feeling, but I just try to put my best foot forward. I try to stay focused on what I'm doing, and I try to self-empower and self-motivate myself, so that I already have something to start with. And when I connect with other people, they just help me with my motivation. They help me inspire myself. And so I start with myself, and that's very, very, very important. Another thing, one of the things that was really difficult for me was that transition was turning my pain into power. And yes, it's very hard, but it's very satisfying when you're able to do it. When people are able to turn their pain into purpose, when they're able to turn their pain into power, it's very satisfying. I can tell you about some things that people have gone through in their lives, and they fell off their bicycle, and I use that just as a term, just as an example of what I'm talking about. You lost a husband, you lost a job, you lost a house. Those are things that will, discourage you in life. Those are hits that you take, that we all take. You've lost a job, but how do you get back up afterwards? How do you decide that okay, this has happened. What do I do now? I can't just, my life does not stop because I lost a job. My life does not stop because I lost a husband. I have to move on. Okay, I've had breast cancer. What do I do next? How can I move on after having breast cancer? And all of those things make you a survivor if you continue to move forward. And so that's one of the things that I pride myself on, that I will be able to move forward regardless. And that's why I use Maya Angelou's term all the time, is still I rise, because it feels like whatever I'm going through, I have to convince myself before anybody else talks to me. I have to convince myself that still I rise, that I will get back up. I will keep it moving. I will be happy. I will be prosperous. I will be at peace. And you have to talk those things. You have to speak those things into your life. And so I want to also tell you about when I was going through my transition from pain to purpose. I had a favorite Bible verse, and it was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not unto your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. And so I leaned on that. When I didn't know what to say, when I didn't know what to pray for, I just told God about Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And I let God know that I'm not going to lean into my own understanding. I'm just going to trust in you, that you're going to show me the way, and you're going to be you're going to lead me into the right direction to where I need to be. And so I take some losses in life. I take some struggles in life, but at the end of the day, I always know that still I rise. And that's so very important to know that within, that regardless of what you're going through, regardless of what you will go through, and regardless of what you're experiencing, that still you're going to come up from out of the ground, from out of the darkness, and you will still rise. And you have to let your light shine when that does happen. So I don't know, you guys, I could talk for days. So you might want to ask me a question about something. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Miss Fulton. How are you? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was definitely very inspiring. This is Dr. KY's Whitehead. I know that you're on the phone, so I will introduce myself. And I am the moderator for tonight's discussion. And so I was sitting here when you said you could talk all night. I was just grabbing my pen, ready to take more notes from the Bible scriptures to your own personal story. But I want to thank you. And I think I want to speak for mothers around this country and really around this world who are trying to lean in there with you, who have not had that experience, but we know that with the way things are moving, this could be us. So thank you for picking up the mantle and for showing us that there is power and there's strength and there's hope and there's light and there's love and there's laughter on the other side. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I want to invite the other people into the conversation so that we can begin our panel discussion, because I believe Ms. Fulton has really laid the groundwork for what does it mean to talk about the power of motherhood, using the Maya Angelou quote, "Still we rise." I, of course, am automatically thinking about Angela Davis, because when I think about mothers, I'm not just thinking of mothers who give birth to us, but also of Black women who struggle and whose life and whose work makes us linger and pull to them as if they are mothers, because they're guiding the way for us. I want to invite into the conversation, or back into the conversation, the president of Kaiser Foundation Health Plan of the Mid-Atlantic States, Ruth Williams-Brinkley, who spoke at the top of the program. Welcome back. Everyone's clicking back on. I also have Dr. Ada Emarievbe. I have been practicing, perhaps not very well, but she's a board certified obstetrician, gynecologist with Permanente Medicine in the greater Baltimore area, where in her words, she has the joy of caring for patients and delivering their beautiful babies since 2014. She graduated from Georgetown University School of Medicine and completed her OBGYN residency at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. Dr. Ada, thank you for joining us. I am really excited to see you because of all the studies that have come out talking about how Black babies have higher survival rates when they're taken care of by Black doctors. So I am just opening my heart to welcome you tonight. And then we're also joined by Miss Annette Grier. She's a nurse, a certified funeral service practitioner as well, a visionary and co-founder and president of Roberta's House, a family grief support center that offers a place for children and families to mourn and heal after the death of a loved one. And I have had Roberta's House on my radio show a number of times. So thank you for the work that you do in Baltimore City as we learn how to turn our pain into purpose to pull from the introduction to Miss Fulton. So let me begin by going first to Dr. Ada. So in the wake of this dual pandemic of COVID-19, and the racial justice movement. We make the argument that even though this country is in the midst of a global pandemic, as an African American, we're in the midst of a syndemic, right? Because it's not just COVID-19 that we're dealing with, also dealing with the reality of Kenosha and the reality of being disproportionately represented in the number of people who have died or have caught COVID-19. So in the midst of all of this, what do you see as some of the major challenges for mothers of color, and what about this moment has surprised you the most? So I'll go to Dr. Ada first, and I'd like to ask the same question to Annette.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. First, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity and being part of this panel to talk about a very important topic today. So thank you again. In the last few months, as we all know, we've all seen, we've either been affected personally or know someone who's been affected. We've seen how COVID-19 has ravaged Black communities. And how that pandemic has magnified the major challenges of health inequity and access to care for mothers of color. This is demonstrated in various ways. One of those ways is job loss. Job loss, according to the Pew Research Center, has disproportionately impacted people of color in general. And by affecting that and by disproportionately impacting the ability to provide and financially sustain your family, it also makes it difficult to maintain health insurance, which directly impacts access. Another way that women of color are disproportionately affected is that, especially during the COVID pandemic, we know that women of color are more likely to work in the service industry or to be essential workers, where the opportunity to socially distance or work remotely may be limited. They also have to balance the safety of going out to work with financially supporting their family. So those are two. Another one that I think about for moms as it pertains to access and being seen during pregnancy is for moms who depend on public transportation. It's been increasingly difficult and less safe for them to access the care they need. But on a positive note, and to answer the second part of your question, what surprised me the most, at Kaiser Permanente, our ability to enhance access points of care during the COVID pandemic ensured that our moms received appropriate care at the right time. We significantly increased our video visits, our telehealth opportunities, and in doing so, our moms and our children continued the care that they needed, that they deserved. During that time, Kaiser Permanente launched the Household Prevention Program, which has been very popular among our patients. And this is a program where patients were connected to counselors who provided them with information about community resources. They sent quarantine kits, such as masks and disinfectants and gloves, to keep the family safe and keep everyone safe. So as moms were trying to figure out between teaching their kids and trying to be pseudo teachers the last part of the school year, and juggle between going into work and risking getting exposure. I'm proud to work for an organization like Kaiser Permanente that put that at the forefront of their priority in protecting our moms and their children.
Wow.
And so I'll keep that question going to Annette. What about this moment surprised you the most? And then Ruth, I'll ask you to answer that as well.
Sure. So again, I want to also thank Kaiser Permanente for allowing me to be a part of this panel. And I don't think there's much more as far as the challenges that I can add to what Dr. Ada just shared. I do want to say that women of color, I think, are challenged even greater because most women of color are the providers of their families, and childcare right now is really a threat to many of our households, and especially as the school year is approaching, many of our women, the women in our communities work. And so how they're going to manage, taking care and teaching their children and still going to work to provide for their families is probably going to be one of the greatest challenges that they're facing right now. And I'm sure that if they can't go to work, then they can't provide for their families. And again, we're going to see this disproportionate, level of education within our households, because we know that many of these children will probably be in the households without supervision or someone assisting them on the computer or helping them in their studies. What surprises me about this time that we're in right now with the justice movement is that there is a lot of vocal voice on behalf of police brutality, and which is much needed. It's not undeniable at all. But I wish that there was a more vocal shout and scream about the guns in our communities and the drugs that are coming into our communities to poison our children and infect the minds of our families. It just seems like we have so much more to stand up for and to fight for in our communities, in this violence that is taking over in our communities as a result of the drugs and the gun violence. And the challenge, that's what surprises me, is that we as women aren't screaming louder about the safety of our children and how these weapons are coming into our homes and our communities.
And so, Ruth, if you can also answer that, it's really, with the fact that Dr. Ada has framed it for us, coming out of Ms. Fulton's keynote, are there any particular moments that have just completely surprised you with where we are now?
Well, I have to say that what has really surprised me are the continued, what I'm going to call, what appears to be the disrespect for life with the guns and the killing. And of course, the coronavirus surprised all of us. None of us last year this time thought we'd be dealing with something like this. So with that overlaid with the civil unrest, what has surprised me is just the continued disrespect for life, as I said earlier. But what has also surprised me is the resilience of people to continue to fight for justice. I'm not saying that the violence is correct. And so that's not what I'm saying. But the determination of people to stand firm and to fight in a positive way, in a peaceful way, for equal rights and for justice. That has, I wouldn't say it surprised me, but it has encouraged me. And, I look at women, Black mothers, Black people who have always had an extra burden to carry on many levels. We have somehow figured out a way to keep moving forward. We have been unfortunately disproportionately impacted by coronavirus because many of us can't leave the city and go someplace safer where there are not people who are infected. And so we continue to go to work because we have to feed our families and provide for our families. I am encouraged, though, by the resilience of Black women and Black people in general. So I will say that. So surprised and encouraged.
Ms. Fulton, we are asking people if they have questions, put your questions into the question box, not the chat, into the question box, and I will ask them. There's a question for you, Ms. Fulton, from Tony Birch, asking, how do you respond when you still see incidences of violence against our young Black men? How do you cope with that?
How do I cope with it? Well, some of it I have to block out. I will tell you that I have to. I'm forced to because it's too much. It continues to happen, and it just feels like people are disrespecting Black lives. You know, it seems like the more we say Black Lives Matter, the less other people are concerned with Black lives. And when we continue to see people being shot in the back and shot down in the street, and nobody is being arrested, nobody is being held accountable, that's a blatant sign of disrespect. But we can't give up because it's dark. We have to come through the light. We don't have a choice. They can't kill all of us, and so we have to stand up, and more people need to stand up, more people need to get involved, more people need to participate. But what happens is a lot of times people wait until it hits their family, like I did. They wait until it's their son, their daughter, their nephew. They wait until it hits their family in order for them to get involved. I commend the people, the protesters, the peaceful protesters that's in the street. I commend their resilience, and I commend them for not waiting until it happens to their family. And so I just can't give up. It's already affected me. It's already affected my family. And I can't give up. I have to keep pushing forward until I see positive change.
Dr. Ada, I want to come back to you. There was a recent study in the New York Times that talked about the rate in terms of Black mothers giving birth, how they're being affected, and how so many of them are dying at a disproportionate rate. In this time when we're thinking about our communities, when we're thinking about mental health, trauma, and grief, what type of advice would you give to Black women right now who feel that they are not being heard within a system where only 5% of the physicians look like them?
Yeah, so the recent tragic events involving the Black community brings into full view the terror and trauma that Black people experience every day in this country and around the world, but even more so for Black moms and children. And kind of to piggyback off of the quotes that you just mentioned, according to the CDC, for every 1,000 live births, 4.8 white infants die in the first year of life. For Black babies, that number is 11.7. And so a very significant number and disproportionate number. And then to your other point, when it comes to representation within the healthcare field, with having only 5% of the physician workforce in the United States being of African American or Black, that is, disproportionate in terms of having someone who maybe relates or looks like you, where you can build a trusting relationship. So I think it's really important for our moms, especially our Black moms, to build their networks. We know that being an advocate for yourself is the biggest thing you can do. And so being well versed in, your pregnancy or just even your health in general is important to make sure you're doing shared decision making with your providers. And when we look at the recent study that you mentioned about Black babies that are born by providers who are African American, it speaks again to the importance of diversity within workforces. And when it comes to Kaiser Permanente, we have a very diverse workforce. When we look at the pediatrics, our pediatricians, our OBGYNs, majority of our pediatricians are female, majority of our OBGYNs are African American, and that's largely what contributes to our extraordinary outcomes for our mothers when they give birth. So I think a lot of the advice is be a part of your healthcare, be engaged in your healthcare, ask appropriate questions. You have choice, and sometimes we don't think we do. We have such a robust opportunity in terms of family sharing, the opportunities for us to share ideas and stories over social media, to inform ourselves of factual information. That's the important part, making sure that the information is factual, and bringing that to the table when you have conversations about your health, about your baby, about just treatment and plans, bringing that to the table so that there's always shared decision making.
Ms. Ruth, I want to come to you because you did a piece in the Maryland Daily Record where you were talking about how Black women in the United States are 2.5 times more likely to die during or after childbirth than white women, and 40% more likely to die from breast cancer. Can you talk a little bit about implicit and explicit biases that affect healthcare for women of color, following up with what Dr. Ada said?
Well, you know, I really am moved by what I heard Dr. Ada say, and it's not the first time I've heard those statistics, but they are shocking every time you hear them. And so, you know, as she indicated, at Kaiser Permanente, we really try to deal with the whole person. But if you look at the national statistics, and I've got some here that I'm going to just talk about. Yes, Black women are disproportionately impacted. And in my article, I talked about particularly Black mothers who are dying in childbirth. The statistics are alarming. Black women in the US are almost 3 times more likely to die during or after childbirth than white women. We have to realize that what these data are telling us is that the fact that Black women aren't able to survive childbirth in the US, and this is across the country, a process that should be natural, that should be a joyful occasion, that's alarming. And then these statistics are from the World Health Organization, and our results are comparable to those of women in countries such as Mexico and Uzbekistan, where significant proportions of the population live in poverty. Now, we have a lot of people living in poverty as well, but we also have the science and the healthcare systems that should help us to do much better. For pregnant women, preeclampsia, especially for African American women, that's the leading cause of maternal death. Eclampsia is a condition where characterized by seizures, and preeclampsia is the lead up to that, where you have high blood pressure that's out of control, and so forth. For Black women, we are 60% more likely to have preeclampsia than white women. And this is from the U.S. Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. So these are statistics we keep. And then finally, the last thing I will mention is that research shows that Jim Crow laws still impact the health of Black women. A study found that among U.S. women diagnosed with breast cancer, Black women born in a Jim Crow state had an increased risk of being diagnosed with tumors that are more aggressive and less responsive to chemotherapy, because of sometimes being misdiagnosed or getting treatment late, or both. So, you know, I think what we have to do as people of color, as Black women, we have to advocate for ourselves and to get the answers that we need, and work with physicians and others, such as Dr. Ada, talking about people who understand the care that you need and understand how the body, how different persons react differently to different drugs, to different treatments, and so forth. So you know, at Kaiser Permanente, we really try to build that system of social-centered care and person-centered care. So one of the things we're doing is really we've established this, what we're calling the Mid-Atlantic Community Health Network, to look at some of the social issues so that people who are having social issues like homelessness, like lack of food, and so forth can get some help. So we're rolling that out. There's just so much work to do, but we have to be encouraged. We cannot stop. We have to keep moving forward.
I want to come to you, Annette, and talk a little bit about Roberta's house. I mean, the issues that we're talking about now, whether it's about violence, whether it's about what happens with maternal health or our infant health or COVID-19, all of these issues tend to cause extreme grief and trauma within our community, whether you're dealing with it firsthand or from the experience that we are a village. So when the village is suffering, then I am suffering too. Can you talk about ways that we can begin to think through dealing with grief and trauma? Maybe some ideas you have for what people can do if they're either firsthand in this or it's within the village itself.
Sure. Well, one of the first sort of beliefs is we as African American women is that we're expected to be strong and to be able to push through any barrier that's presented to us. And we're expected to take care of everyone except ourselves. And unfortunately, we as Black women feel that that's our role, and oftentimes it's to the detriment of, you know, not taking care and looking out for our own health, even mental health. And for years or centuries, you know, to seek mental health services was often a taboo or a sign that you were crazy. Oftentimes we hear stories at Roberta's house where, which by the way, right now is probably about 90% females who reach out for help, which is awesome. So that, you know, I think that we have done a great job at educating the community, the importance of grief education and grief support, the need for support. And as Ms. Fulton talked about, you know, part of her healing came through the circle of women that she created. And that's what Roberta's house is about. So we as women really have to learn to put ourselves as priority, because some of these mortality rates come from putting everyone first before ourselves and being diagnosed late. We also have to recognize that women who are the providers of their homes, who are in their careers, trying to build their careers, as well as trying to be mothers and a wife these roles are multitask and very, very stressful. And stress is what leads to dis-ease, which leads to disease. And so, you know, we all have to learn ways of giving better care. One thing at Roberta's house that we are implementing is more mindfulness exercises, and even making sure that women are getting their physicals each year, getting their checkups, taking vitamins, some of the practical things that we ignore just because we're trying to keep so many balls up in the air. And grief is real. You know, grief is and Mrs. Fulton talked about this. It's shattering. It's probably the most stressful experience that any individual will experience in life. And we as caregivers, or even those who are surrounding mothers who are going through these things, need to recognize that people need support. We cannot go through grief alone. Our minds will take us places that can be very unhealthy. and can get our bodies literally sick. And we need the support of others in order to get through some of these crises and traumatic experiences. I was reading an article where Black women are more likely to be raped than any other woman. Black women are more likely to be in domestic violent relationships than any other women. And, you know, we have to learn how to process these experiences, because historically, women have, in the male dominant world, have been silent. And I think that we are just learning to speak out and to speak up and to represent ourselves. And as Mrs. Brinkley, Williams-Brinkley talked about, you know, even as far as doctor visits, being able to ask questions and be confident about asking questions and not just being passive and accepting whatever tests that, you know, or surgical procedures that are happening. In fact, just recently, a friend of mine was having a surgical procedure that she was very uncomfortable with. And, you know, I encouraged her, you know, get a second opinion. You don't have to take that first, you know, opinion that someone is giving you, and then you can make a better judgment. So oftentimes we have not questioned physicians or people of education and authority. And you know, this takes a village, all of us, to help and support women of color to continue to do what we do, because I don't think, you know, we're going to stop working. We're not going to stop reaching our goals as far as education. We're not going to stop being a wife. We're not going to stop caring for our children. We're still going to have all of these tasks upon us, but we've got to learn to put ourselves first. And grief is a part of life that we all will experience. And this whole image of being super strong and not reaching out for help and not sharing our emotions and feelings with our children and family, you know, in order to protect our kids, can be dangerous, not only for us, but for our children as well. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you very much for that. Folks, if you have questions, please put them in the question box, because I definitely will be drawing upon your question. Ms. Fulton, I have a question for you that someone shared in the box. Dana Covert was saying Black mothers are often the invisible victims of police violence. Can we talk a bit about how we can support Black mothers, very generally, and Black women specifically, in the context of helping them to find their power and being able to use their voice?
I think women are we have been in the shadow for some time now, and black women are stepping out of the shadow, and they are speaking up and speaking out. And so I just, you know, one of the things that I believe has to happen is we have to continue to support each other. We have to continue to, when one of your friends or your co-workers or somebody comes to you with an issue that they're having, you have to support them. A lot of times, you know, we don't, and we should. We have to support them so that they can stand up and they can voice whatever concerns they have. A lot of times people don't want to look around and they're the only one standing there. So we got to support each other, and that's a big deal for me. Making sure that not only do people support me, but that I support others, you know, and that's very, very, very hard for me, because a lot of people reach out to the foundation because they want me to support, but it's so many mothers, and it's so many, you know, people reaching out, that I don't get around to every event and everything that, you know, people have for me. And that's one of the things that bothers me sometimes late at night. But I do my very best to try to, you know, spread myself you know, into different areas so that I can support other people just as they support me. So it's about support. So I would just tell them it's about support and supporting that mom, supporting that woman when she speaks out and speaks up about something, instead of knocking people down. A lot of times, you know, when people come out with different things, sexual assault and things like that, you know, sometimes your friends and your family question what you've said, you know, and we should lend more support in that area. And that's the reason why people don't like to speak out, because they need that type of support. They need to know that other people believe them and other people are standing with them.
Thank you so much. So in addition to being doctors and trauma counselors and being presidents over at Kaiser Permanente, we're also Black women in America, Black mothers, Black aunts, Black sisters. And so I wanted to, with our last question, because it's kind of kept coming up a little bit in the question, to make it personal, because of this syndemic that we're dealing with, the struggle of getting up every day and moving forward and feeling that you have a voice can sometimes feel overwhelming. And so I wanted to come first to Ms. Williams-Brinkley and talk about an issue that we don't talk about a lot. And I know Ms. Grier kind of alluded to it, but about self-care. As Black women, Black mothers and aunties in this country, can you talk a little bit about self-care? And I'll go to Ms. Williams-Brinkley first, and then Dr. Adam, Ms. Grier, and then I'll end with Ms. Fulton.
Well, you know, it's something that we're all probably guilty of not taking care of ourselves. We've talked about that. But what I have made a commitment to myself to do is I try to exercise 3 days a week. I don't want to do it. I hate it, quite frankly, but I do it because I want to be able to be around for my family. And so I think as women of color, we have to, and that's this, we have to put ourselves first sometimes. We put everybody else first and we don't do the things for ourselves. So I would encourage each of us to do that for yourself. It's tough right now during COVID because gyms are closed, but you can walk. You can walk on the streets if you're in a safe area. You can walk in your house if you need just one from the front to the back. People exercise all the time. We have to think of simple ways to put ourselves first, and that includes both physical and mental health. You know, one of the things that I love about Kaiser Permanente is that we are always telling people to prioritize both your physical and your mental health. These are stressful times, and the stress starts to get into our bodies, and we talked about that earlier. It increases our blood pressure. It impacts our hearts. It impacts our organs. So, and it impacts our minds. And so we have to make sure that we give ourselves the space and the time and the grace to take good care of our bodies and our minds. So I just believe in that. I don't practice it as religiously as I should. I will be honest, but I am better than I was. And so I just think we have to prioritize ourselves.
Dr. Ada?
Yeah, I feel like I have a conversation about self-care with my girlfriends or sisters every other day. It should probably be every day, but again, self-care, right? So, you know, making sure you're locking into those people that build you up and refuel you, making sure you're able to walk away from work sometimes, honestly. I think one of the biggest things that we know about women of color is that a lot of times they're the primary caretakers, they're the primary breadwinners. And so they're oftentimes working 1, 2, 3 jobs. And it's really hard to think about exercise when you haven't even slept more than 4 hours in a day. And so it's really important to make sure that you're tapping into those things that make you happy, that bring you joy. Sometimes Sometimes it's being with your friends. Sometimes it's being alone. Sometimes it's, you know, going up to your room and just having a moment. And, you know, I was really encouraged by Miss Fulton and just in that Bible verse. And sometimes you just have to get back to, like in her words, the spirit that's within you. And it's really hard to do that when you're juggling the kids and school and your own job and your own aspirations and the stressors of all of that mixed in one thing. And even the things that we don't see, like some women are battling with hypertension, diabetes, but even more than that, we talked about the physical and mental health, right? And so, you know, depression has become a public health issue. And when we think about our women of color, especially our Black moms, we're concerned about perinatal and postpartum depression. These are important things. And as we struggle through quarantine and stay-at-home orders, where a lot of us may just be suffering in silence, it's even more important to make sure we are engaging with those things and those people that uplift us. And, you know, when it comes to depression, you know, Kaiser Permanente screens our moms at every trimester, including postpartum. We want to make sure that through the pregnancy course and even after delivery, our moms are healthy physically and mentally. When it comes to postpartum depression in general, women of color are proportionately at higher risk of having postpartum depression, and more importantly, not seeking the care for it, either because they don't recognize it as postpartum depression, because again, to Annette's point, we're strong women, right? We don't get sad, we can get up and keep moving. And so we don't really look at ourselves as depressed. There's a taboo in the community regarding behavioral health and seeking help for your mental health. So again, being aware of this is so important, both for women who are in pregnancy, even postpartum. The fourth trimester is something that people may not really know about, but those are the integral weeks after delivery where it's important for mom and baby. And so one of the things we do, and I'm proud as an OBGYN to be a part of this, is after a mom delivers, we call them a few days later. We check in on them to see how they're doing, make sure they have their support. The nurses, the OB nurses will call and screen them again for depression. Domestic violence, we saw that increase during the pandemic, substance abuse. So again, these are all things that are impacting women of color every single day. And the stigma of being strong and being able to handle it on your own is actually more, is affecting us more than others because of that reason, and not really having that support. So building the support, being an advocate for yourself, reading up on all the things that affect you, affect your family, tapping into the things that bring you joy, even if it's for 30 minutes, are going to be the biggest things, in my opinion, to ensure that we're sustaining and keeping and maintaining our mental health.
Ms. Grier, self-care.
Well, wow, I don't know if I can add too much, but I also am guilty of not always putting myself first. In fact, I have to confess that some of the health conditions like diabetes and hypertension that I struggle with today, I do believe that it has resulted because of stress and not eating properly. So I have made many goals, and sometimes I get off track, but I try to get back on to make sure that I eat in healthy ways, proper diet, trying to cook more vegetables. I also believe that mind health is also critical, because from the mind stems all of the stress hormones and endorphins that brings us relaxation and peace. So our thoughts, I work very hard at, as Mrs. Fulton shared, she said the self-talk I think is very important. I have to do a lot of self-talk to tell me, you know, that this day is going to be a good day, or I'm going to get through today. It's not going to be as stressful as I think. Tomorrow will be another day, and I'll just handle one day at a time. I do a lot of self-talk, and I think that spirituality and reaching into myself is also very important, and realizing that I think my faith helps me to realize that I have a purpose and that there's a greater strength than my own that's helping me to fulfill my purpose on this earth. I think that calms me from my fears of what might happen. I'm in an industry of death, and I see so much death every day and hear so many stories that I have to really set my boundaries so that I don't get caught up, because that vicarious trauma is very real. And I have to keep my boundaries and know when not to let my mind wander too deep and too far. So mind health is so important. And I hear people just share so many stories about their friends and their families and losses and traumatic experiences that I'm often concerned about their well-being, and how we take care of ourselves, just hearing so much trauma, and how we're coping with all of this. And so, yes, the walking, finding your hobbies. I love to garden. I love to cook. Looking at the things that bring me joy, as you said, Dr. Ada, even if it's for 20 or 30 minutes, being careful about not watching these movies that are these, killer murder movies and violent movies. Even the news can be traumatic today. So looking for those funny movies and opportunities. I heard a recommendation that in order to keep a balance in life, the best therapy is to have 3 good laughs a day. 3 good laughs a day. If you can get 3 good laughs in a day, you may add another 10 years to your life. So I'm going to start practicing that one. I'm going to find something, even if it's pulling up YouTube and looking at some animal clips of these animals doing crazy things, whatever it might be. But we need to laugh, because that releases so many of the endorphins in our bodies to sort of just help us to let go of so much stress.
Thank you. I know, Ms. Fulton, you started with giving us some of your self-care tips. And so I wanted to come to you with a question from our chat. Janie Yukabu asked this question: what are some things that Black mothers can do to prepare their children for the harsh realities we face as people of color without traumatizing them? It's around having that talk with our children. I'll start with you, Ms. Fulton, and then I'll get a quick answer from everyone before we wrap up.
That's going to be very difficult to have a serious conversation with them without traumatizing them. I mean, you don't want them to be afraid, but you do want them to be aware. And so you do need to give examples of what's going on so that they understand, and they understand clearly that it's not necessarily about their education level. It's not about how athletic they are. It's about the color of their skin. And so we do need to have that conversation with them, and it needs to be a serious conversation. I wouldn't want to traumatize them, but you do need to make sure that you drop in the right type of knowledge so that they understand clearly what you're saying. And then a lot of times that I found when I work with young people is not only do I have to say it, I have to ask them what I said. And when I ask them what I said, that shows to me if they understood what I said, because I might be talking for an hour, and when I ask them, what did you understand what I said, and they don't repeat it back, or they don't tell me how they understood it, that means I've wasted my time and I need to talk a little bit more. So we got to ask our young people, because they have a whole different language than we do. than we did when we were growing up. So you gotta not only talk to them, but you have to ask them questions so that you know that they understand what you're saying. So it's a serious conversation. Hopefully it's not traumatic. Hopefully you can give them examples. They're gonna have more questions at the end than you have answers, but that's just something that we have to do as far as talking to our kids about what's going on today with the racial disparities.
And in wrapping up, Ms. Williams-Brinkley, I want to come back to you because as a leader of a leading national health center, can you just talk about the importance of person-centered care for all? So part of that is about self-care. Part of that is about trying to make our children, as Ms. Fulton said, not afraid but aware. Part of it is thinking about who are we going to take care of us. So can you just talk a little bit about person-centered care for all and specifically for women of color?
I want to, just talk about basing the care around the person. And so, I mean, it's a simple concept, yet it's not always easy to do. So what we try to do at Kaiser Permanente is put the patient, the person in the center to say, what does Ruth Williams-Brinkley need? In addition to, maybe she doesn't have any big health issues right now, but what does she need to keep her healthy? What does she need to, maybe she needs help with housing. Maybe she can't pay her rent, or maybe she needs healthy food. How do we put the resources? So this Mid-Atlantic Health Network that we've put together, Community Health Network that we've put together, is bringing a lot of the resources around people, because a lot of the illnesses we see start out as social issues. And so if we can intervene a little bit earlier, which is what we're trying to do, we want to wrap the social issues around the person and at the same time deal with their whole body, their whole self. So mentally, physically, emotionally. That's basically how we address person-centered care. And it's what you need, not what I need, or my needs are different from Annette's needs. Her needs are different from Eva's. So that's what it's all about, not doing a cookie cutter approach.
I want to thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Before I pass it over to Alma Roberts to give the closing statement, I just wanted to thank Annette March Grier. She's the president of Roberta's House. Dr. Ada Emarievbe, she's a board-certified obstetrician, gynecologist with Permanente Health. Ruth Williams-Brinkley is the president of Kaiser Foundation Health Plan of the Mid-Atlantic States. And of course, our keynote address was from Sybrina Fulton. Ms. Roberts, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. My goodness, how powerful, how absolutely powerful. Good evening, everyone in the audience. I'm Alma Roberts. I'm the interim director of community health for the Mid-Atlantic States of Kaiser Permanente. And I am also a board member of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. And I am chair of the board of Roberta's House. So I am deeply connected to this entire panel. All of them have my greatest respect. Let me thank Ms. Fulton for such an inspirational message, and all of you for your wonderful insights into a much needed discussion. These discussions are critically important to not just understanding what this madness is we're living through, but also to healing. And so for that, I am eternally grateful to be able to work for Kaiser Permanente and to be in this partnership with Reginald F. Lewis Museum. I want to make sure you all know about our upcoming, the continuation of this panel, this series. Next in the series is How Are Our Children? With a renowned educator, Dr. Lisa Delpit, who will deal with the impact of this situation, not just the COVID virus and their isolation from friends and normality, but also the uprisings that we see playing out throughout our nation. And then we end with Endangered, the state of Black men in America. You'll get invitations. All of you who registered will be able to immediately begin to register for the remaining parts of our series, for the next part at least. And we look forward to having you with us as we continue this journey. Thank you so much and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.